Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Steffen, and you're listening to Attributed, a podcast library by Dreamdata.
The purpose of it is to store and share all the knowledge that we have gathered across Dreamdata employees through our LinkedIn Lives, podcasts, and webinars.
The typical topics you'll find here can be stuff like marketing,
Sales,
B2B ads,
operations,
social selling maybe.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining in again for a quick talk on growth in B2B, in marketing, in SaaS, something related to that at least. Today, I'm joined by Esben, who's a fellow Dane and one of those who can say he probably made it in the US, at least well enough for
at least trying
to. Yeah, and Esben, just to warm up slowly, I've sort of put it on you to kind of present yourself, maybe a little bit about your own journey this far in business and maybe in life as well.
Yeah, no, I was born in Aalborg. No,
were you born in Aalborg as well?
Yeah, actually, so I always lived in Copenhagen area, but my parents, they were living in Tanzania in Africa, and then they went back to Jutland, where their parents are from, and then they gave birth to me, and then they went straight back to Tanzania. So yeah, I lived there for the first 3 years of my life. So yeah, that was fun.
Crazy.
Yeah, can't remember anything about that. But then, fast forward to when I was like around in my late 20s, I had been a consultant at the big consultancy Accenture and kind of worked for, the big enterprises, kind of boring big projects, but lots of learning experiences for sure. And I really wanted to start a company of my own and build something myself. And luckily, I had a good colleague in Accenture, Jacob, who convinced me to join him to build this company called Cobalt. And we actually went to Buenos Aires in Argentina for 3 months to build an MVP. And then it just took off, and we built a successful company. Today, Cobalt is 200 plus employee and getting close to a Series C, I guess. So very successful cybersecurity company. So that was a lot of fun.
I was kind of. Did any of you have like tech skills, or did you have to hire tech people outside, or?
So we were besides from me and Jacob, it was his brother and then his brother's friend from high school, and none of us, I mean, we all worked in IT or had been somewhat in IT, but none of us were developers. So Jacob and his brother, they actually taught themselves how to code, and that's how we made the first MVP. And then slowly we progressed from there by hiring some better developers. But the first platform was built by Jacob and his brother, and that was enough to get us started and really get it off the ground. So that was a lot of fun.
How did you get the first customers to Cobalt then?
Back then, so this was in 2013. So it was very different from today. But we were, I would say, so today we're going to talk about product-led growth. I think most startups really start out in a very product-led growth fashion, right? They focus a lot on the product, and we did as well. So we really were totally 100% focused on building the best product possible. So initially, like build a product MVP and get somebody to use it. And initially, because this was very much what Cobalt is this kind of security testing platform that connects penetration testers with businesses. So first of all, we needed to get supply. So while we were building the product, we went out and kind of sourced what you will call security researchers or penetration testers to basically join our platform. And that was pretty easy. A lot of them were looking for something like this where they could earn money. So they went out and we quickly got hundreds of security testers on the platform. But then the hard part was, of course, to get some customers to actually try it out. And in the beginning, we just reached out in our network and got somebody on board. And then we kind of grew from there. But in the beginning, it was we had self-sign up. People were, joining via signing up to our platform as we grew. But then over time, we realized we were up against consultancies who had a more high-touch approach. And we were defining a whole new market. Nobody had done this before. It was a brand new market. And that's also one of the challenges that some businesses will meet in product-led growth is really you're defining a new market, so you have to educate customers in those type of worlds. It's a bit harder to do product-led growth, and that's what we realized. And then we started doing more demo calls and selling in a kind of more sales-led fashion.
Yeah. Actually, something I want to return to later on, because we're talking a bit about it at Dreamdata ourselves as well, is that how can you sell to enterprises through a product-led model where like there's typically all these terms and data privacy agreements, etc. you need to sign before moving into a sales conversation.
So we went on that journey, and we were very successful with the sales-led motion, right? And over time, the market matured. Everybody started knowing about Cobalt, and we also got competitors. So a market was defined. And when you have that market defined, that's where product-led growth becomes valuable again. So we started actually a transition towards moving back towards those early day roots of being more product-led again. So in Cobalt, we went on that journey, and that was one of the last initiatives I was part of before I left operationally in 2021 to start Userflow.
When you think back on it, what was the kind of like the most important kind of parts of making that company successful? Were there any like particular silver bullets or hacks, or was it just pure hard work?
It's a lot of grind. I mean, none of the four of us came from the security industry, so we didn't know anybody. I think that was a blessing in disguise, because we didn't have any bias towards what was possible and what was not possible. So we kind of looked at it with open eyes and said, of course you can source freelance pen testers from all over the world and have them test your web apps, right? Why not? And it was really about, just taking it one step at a time and really growing from there. I think another thing we did exceptionally well was to focus a lot. We 100% focused on selling to software as a service businesses. So we didn't go beyond our core market focus, and we were able to grow in that market and really become the pen test provider for software as a service businesses, right? Whereas we definitely saw more old school industries reaching out, but it was just a whole other world, a whole other procurement process, a whole other need. Whereas with the software as a service world, it was a clearly defined market, a clearly defined need. Typically, you do pen testing to get compliance or similar, right? And the buyer persona was typically the same, like a director of security or similar. So it was a very kind of clear defined market. I think that's one thing that really made us successful is that piece, a core market focus.
So you guys was also, you were funded by investors as well, and investors always at least the ones we've met are they want a huge target addressable market. So you ended up saying that it's almost any company in the world that you can sell this product to. But as a day-to-day operator, you need a very narrow focus on a very narrow group, because your customer success cases should be similar to the next person you're going to sell to, and not completely off and all those things.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, I mean, one thing, actually, a funny story about Cobalt was initially we were doing something called bug bounty programs. And we had two big competitors, actually three, and they all raised tons of money, right? And we were actually late to the game and didn't raise that much money to begin with. But it actually allowed us to iterate on our model a lot easier. So we didn't have those big expectations. Okay, this bug bounty model needs to succeed. We were more flexible to actually change our business model into being focused on penetration testing instead. And that turned out to be a great decision. So we had a bit more flexibility, because we didn't go out and raise a ton of money on something that was more of a vision than a true product market fit reality.
Nice. Just before we switch directly into the product-led thing and what you're doing today, which is also product-led, so how was what was your process out of Cobalt? Because it's still a going business now, and what made you decide that let's start all over one more time?
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun building Cobalt, and we grew the team quite a lot. And when I left, they were around 100 plus people, something like that. So they added 100 more since then. So I think it was just time for me to move on. I'm very much an entrepreneur by heart and kind of just want to be in that early stage of a business. And Cobalt was now like a grown-up business with vice presidents, and managers and all that stuff. That's great. That's needed to build an organization at that scale. But for me, I just wanted to be closer to the product and more going back and starting something new. And then it really intrigued me, this whole product-led growth world and onboarding world that my friend Sebastian was doing. But I mean, leaving Cobalt was not an easy decision, but at that point in time, Cobalt was at a stage where I was no longer a need to have. I was more like a nice to have, right? And so it was actually an easy transition.
Yeah. How long back is it that you left now and started Userflow?
So beginning of 2021, I left Cobalt, and Userflow, you can say I didn't start Userflow because Userflow was already started by Sebastian, but I joined him on the journey at that point.
Super nice. But Esben, so we found a name of this conversation to be something around how to do product-led sales as a B2B company. But to get us started, what does it mean for you to be like a product-led business overall?
Yeah, I like to define it in two ways. One way is it's a cultural mindset. It's basically a culture in an organization where everybody thinks product first about everything they do. So then it goes from marketing, sales, customer success, whatever area you have in the business, you always think, how could the product solve this, instead of like, how are we going to hire a bunch of people to solve this problem? Mm-hmm. You always start with the product and then you move from there. So that's really how I like to look at it. The other way to look at it that I also see a lot of others, how they define it, is more compare it to sales-led, right? Where sales-led is the traditional model of doing a demo request, getting a demo, conversations back and forward, and then you get to try the product. Whereas product-led is you start with the product and then you move from there, basically. So that's the.
Can you give some concrete examples of it, or is there some like day-to-day examples where like a sales-led would choose one thing, but a product-led would choose another way?
Yeah, no, I think let's take an example that's close to my heart, of course, onboarding, right? A sales-led company, what they would do to onboard somebody is to set up a customer success call as the very first thing. That would be a way to onboard the customer to understand the product and kind of get familiar with it. And maybe they will even set up more than one meeting. Mm-hmm. Whereas in a product-led company, you would try to see how can we allow the user to self-serve onboard themselves, right? Like how can they just log into the product and then figure things out as much as possible, and then you more maybe reactively can support them on whatever missing pieces there might be, right? But instead of starting with that meeting, you start with the product and have them try the product before you set up the meeting. Intuitively,
it does also sound more cost efficient than rather you have to throw bodies at every customer. The product the technology itself can help people.
Yeah, and you'll be surprised. I mean, I've been in so many situations where it's like I'm forced into these customer success meetings and I'm just like, I don't need that. Your product is great. Don't force me to this call, right? I understand your product. So, and you even have, some of them even have like in-app onboarding, but then still force people to do like onboarding via call. So I think the new world is just that there's a lot of people like myself that don't want that high touch model and much more want to explore on their own.
As a reference to that, I can say that when we introduced our free tier and our free trial tier 1.5 years ago now, for every demo call we had booked, we had 2 people signing up for free instead. So it's something like 1 out of 3 want to start with a demo call. 2 out of 3 actually just want to see the product tested out before you have to talk to anybody.
No, and I think it's going to change even more with Gen Z and the next generations. They are so used to being digital first that it's just like they expect that, right? It's a generation change really that we're seeing in the market.
To go along with that, what would you say, like if you were to like pitch the advantages of like running a product-led organization and a product-led sales motion?
Of course, it relates a lot to you wouldn't be able to do it without this market change that you're seeing, right? That one, software as a service has matured. So people are familiar with software as a service model. They're not so scared of it anymore. But also that the buyers have matured to be a second thing. Yeah. They have a new way they want to experience software. So I think that's the number one thing, is really you are building for the current market, right? That's probably the most important. But the other benefits that comes with that is, as you mentioned yourself, lower CAC, lower service cost, sales and customer success becomes more of a, again, not a need to have, but more a nice to have. And they can definitely add, because I'm not saying that you should not have a sales team or customer success team necessarily in a product-led world, but they're not a need to have. They become the thing that can help maybe drive the account to become a bit larger than it would, and maybe convert the accounts that are in bid and not out. But it doesn't, it's not a need to have to convert and expand the customer.
Yeah, what we experienced as well is that there's a couple of very experienced players in our industry, which we had trouble beating when like we were in a competition, when these like our vendor or our customers were looking at us. And once we introduced this free trial, people could start to see that our product kind of works before they had to sign a contract, which made a big difference. Because like if you're completely in this like used car salesmanship, that you're gonna trust me or trust me, then it's hard as the small one with a few G2 reviews, few success cases, no SOC 2 compliance, etc., to beat that big giant up there, because they do have all the social proof you need to convince people.
Yeah, I think as a new startup starting out, I think maybe, no, I would say even from day one, have a free trial. I think you're missing out on a lot of learnings by hiding your product. And I've seen people end up in a trap where they actually never then move away from the kind of request invite stage kind of world. And one problem with that is I see a lot of those businesses sometimes having issues with monetizing, because it's not like an open market. It's like this kind of, you are our friends trying our product, so we probably shouldn't charge them anything, right? But when you really open up your product, you get people you don't have any personal connection to, and in that way it becomes more a business relationship, which is always better when you want to monetize something, right? You don't want it to be your friends that you have to like really push into paying something or something like that.
Yeah, let's maybe move into a little bit about how to then do it. Do you need to have like a fully automated product where like every single button you push, there's a natural next thing to do, or can you start scrappy, or like how do you see that?
Yeah, you can always start scrappy. I think the number one thing in product is always you should have a great product that solves a real problem, right? And I think that's the number one thing. The UX of your product is super important, and the problem it solves is super important. So really, when you build your first, let's call it MVP or whatever, you should really focus on that core problem. What is it you're solving? What is you're doing better? And make your UX and UI super simple and targeted towards that main thing, right? So start with a simple product that solves that use case. And then over time, you add features, you expand your product, and then you can say the need for more sophisticated onboarding becomes relevant, because suddenly your product is maybe not so easy to understand from the get-go. And then you want to maybe guide users a bit more towards what is the problem you can solve here, right? And that's where something like in-app onboarding, like you can do with Userflow, for instance, becomes super relevant.
Yeah, just our own story starting out with the free product was really that, like we just implemented a landing page, or like on our pricing page, we introduced a free tier. And when you hit that button, you would send a mail. And this mail would end at Lars's inbox, our CEO. And he would manually go in and create an account. And then he would send a manual mail more, and then write to the user, now you can click here and then you have an account. And then they just landed in like the full product. But we just wanted the first proof is, do people prefer to buy this way or this way? And then you can start automating processes around it afterwards.
Agreed. Especially when you're a sales-led business moving to product-led, experiments like that are super nice. But you could have avoided all that by starting out as a product-led business. Then you would have built your product in that world where a trial was not something that was hard to do, right? And in Cobalt, we were in the same situation. We had built a product where a trial was something that was hard to do. And therefore we also need to do all these like experiments. So yes, I would say as a sales-led business moving to product-led, yes, you can do all those like small iterations to learn. But as a new business starting out, just start out with a free trial or something like self-sign up. Then you don't need to do all these changes later.
Yeah, we just got a question in here, Esben, and I'll just throw it up here on the screen. How would you deal with data integrations APIs in the first phase of a product/startup in a product-led zero-touch onboarding?
I assume you have analytics products. They're a classic example of this, where big requirement for actually using the product is you need to integrate it with some data, and you need to add some kind of initial data to your product. And I've seen to really see the value, right, and discover that aha moment. And I've seen it be done in a couple of different ways. I think one way some has tried to do it is by having like a dummy data platform. So you have like dummy data which customers can play with to see, okay, how will it look like? That's definitely one way. Another way is to think about what could be a simple integration we could do that would allow them to actually send some of their own data, but it's not something that requires a lot of development work or anything like that. It's plug and play. An example could be, let's take some kind of customer relations tool, right? Let's say you already run an intercom, and then you add like a plug and play button, import all my contacts from intercom, and then you might show some initial data based on that data you have in intercom, but it's all like a click of a button. It's not like something your developers need to do anything to connect. So yeah, for instance, like a CSV kind of data upload could also be another way to do it. That's a great idea. Something that's easy to do for a non-developer. I think that's super important, especially if you're not selling. If you're selling to developers, then it's completely different. But if you're not selling to developers, it needs to be something a non-developer can do.
Nice. Okay, what else do we got of questions? I'll just look here. Does the way you do marketing change if you're product-led versus like a sales-led company?
Yeah, no, for sure. In general, it's a lot of the same, right? It's positioning. What's your positioning is super important. But what changes a bit, I think, is that you use your product a lot more in your marketing. For instance, at Userflow, we often do like feature Fridays. We do use case scenarios. We talk a lot more about how you can use the product, and it's actually showing the product on your public-facing website, not just writing some fluffy marketing language that this is the best onboarding in the world we could write, right, and then not show the product. But what does that actually mean, right? No, we actually show the product and what are the problems you can solve with it. So the product becomes a much bigger part of your public-facing website, your marketing content, and so on. But in the end, it's all, as any marketing, around your positioning and how are you marketing that part to the world, right?
And that's maybe a good transition to the next question we agreed upon, which is what are some of the great product-led tools out there? Because I think that's actually it's a good way to get started, is to look at those who were successful and see, is there some elements here that we can steal or borrow or whatever you wanna call it?
So there are lots of great businesses out there. So we can look at the tools from two angles, right? Like who's doing product-led well and who can we learn from? I recommend there's a website called useronboard.com where you can see like basically examples of great user onboarding or bad user onboarding. But what I've done a lot, and especially did when we were doing the transition at Cobalt, was go out on all these like very popular SaaS websites and just sign up for their service and try to go through their whole process, right? And you learn a lot from doing that, like tools like Twilio, Webflow. There's a lot of Slack. You know, all these tools, how do they actually go about doing sign up and doing, you know, all these different things. And then you learn from that, right? The other thing you should always do is sign up for your own product, because then you can see what are we doing right and what are we not doing right? And you'll be amazed how many people doesn't try to sign up for their own product and try it out, right? So there's a lot of inspiration to be found in different tools. Stripe is another great product to look at, right? Amazing UX, everything they do is just amazing.
Okay, I was just thinking with Userflow. So what is this product then? Is it Is it recording sessions, or is it a building experience, or what are you trying to solve, at least firstly?
Yeah, so no, if you mean what Userflow as a tool is trying to solve, or what do you mean?
Exactly.
So
what are you trying?
Userflow is a no-code onboarding builder, right? So you can build basically tooltips, product tours, even though I don't like that word because it shouldn't really be a tour. It should be like more jobs to be done driven. So you can basically do in-app content, right? Like in-app guides, in-app checklists, have a self-help widget, so like a resource center where you can always go and find help if you need to. And a typical setup that somebody will build with Userflow is an initial guide that kind of guides the user to the initial moment, and it does that guide them to additional moments. And from the reminder center, did you lose me?
I can still hear you, but you're a little bit grainy to see it. Look at it.
Oh, okay, cool. But basically, a resource center for like ongoing support, right? Or ongoing self-help. So you can build a lot of these things with Userflow, and you can do it as a non-developer. So Userflow is one of those great tools for building product-led onboarding. But Userflow is just one tool in a full tool set, right? And other tools that we at least use are tools like LogRocket for session recording, great tool, highly recommend that.
LogRocket, I didn't know that one.
Yeah, it's similar to like Full Story and these kind of tools where you can see how people are actually using your product. So it's not like analytics, but I also think it's much more tangible because you can actually see the session, where analytics sometimes becomes a bit more harder to understand. But in the long run, you need analytics to have the bigger scale picture. And then you, of course, have analytics tools, like Dreamdata, like Amplitude, these kind of products, right? But one thing I'm very passionate about is one tool I see missing, and I've seen some areas starting of it. There's this industry of product-led revenue, which basically helps people identify product qualified leads and then do actions based on that. That whole market is super interesting. In the beginning, they were called product-led CRMs, which everybody, I think even themselves, agreed that was not really the case. They were more like an add-on to a CRM. But one thing I'm very passionate about is like, I want to see a CRM for software as a service. We're lagging that big time. Like today we use like these Salesforce and HubSpot, but they were built for another age. They were not built for the software as a service world, including PLG, but also just in general subscription-based models. So that's something I have a big hope to see at some point.
Now we're storing this on our YouTube. So if we look at it 5 years from now, who are the companies you want to like mention here, or have you seen any who are trying to do CRM just for SaaS?
No, I haven't seen anybody do it completely. You of course have all the product-led revenue tools, right? You have the correlated, focus, clicks, all of those, right? Endgame. But they seem like they're staying in kind of their own area and not taking on the challenge. Other companies I could see getting into this game are the more subscription-focused companies like ChartMogul, even Stripe. Like Stripe is so integrated into all SaaS processes, right? Like Stripe is huge in software as a service. I think they could start, and they have all the account info, they have all the contact info. That could be really interesting. But I think they're so focused on being a payment processor that they're never going to do it, right? So I think it's going to be somebody completely different taking on this challenge, and I don't think we've seen them yet in the market.
Okay, tell me when they are, so we can try to get some money in there.
Yeah, it's something I'm a bit surprised it hasn't happened yet, that nobody has tried to take on Salesforce and HubSpot and really focus 100% on being fit for purpose. It kind of goes back to what I said about Cobalt. The reason Cobalt grew was because we said we only sell to SaaS businesses, right? And then we build a product for that purpose. And then, yes, over time we expanded to other industries, but I haven't seen any CRM go out and do that really, right? They all seem to just be slightly more modern copies of Salesforce.
I guess it's a classic kind of industry or category development. First, there's one sort of product that is kind of for all, solving a big need. And then there'll be 8 niches underneath this that you can build for afterwards.
I think there's room for one player to go out and say, we are the CRM for software as a service, B2B, right? And that's, I haven't seen any, not even like Pipedrive or these like more newer players doing something like that, right? And I find that quite interesting because if you look at the rest of the SaaS market, there's tons of SaaS businesses just building solely for SaaS businesses.
Wonderful, Esben. Is there anything lastly you feel like we should mention here, like related to doing product-led sales or product-led B2B?
We touched on many things here, right? I think one important topic I always want to highlight is that sales and all these functions, it's not like they go away. It's just that you look at the world in a new way where you always think product first, right? And that's really the most important is you can still have people in the equation, but the product should be the need to have, and the people should be more like not a nice to have, but like a less need to have than product.
Yes, the thing we saw that at Dreamdata is that the roles change of the account executives. We still have all the account executives that were there before. They just do a little bit more of even like customer success or consultancy more than trying to sell it as such.
Yeah, you become, I think, and I could talk about another topic here. I think we are going to see a simplification of the software as a service businesses because we always talked about you need specialization to scale. Yeah. But if in a product-led motion, a lot of the people end up doing more what I would call support or answering questions, and they're more like product experts. So if everybody ends up doing that role, do you still then need the specialization to have sales, customer success, sales engineers, or is it just one team called product experts, right? Or something similar.
Interesting.
I think that's going to be interesting to see how the organization will change.
I agree.
We hope you like listening to us. Subscribe to our podcast and the ones that we have been guests on.
And if you have any feedback for us, just do let us know. And should there be a guest that you think we should be talking to, then pitch us.
We're looking forward to seeing you.